Good afternoon, dear guests and dear distinguished guests and dear audience. I'm Hiro Tezuka. I'm chairing Energy Technology Committee at the Japan Iron Steel Federation. Also, I'm Executive Fellow at the JFE Steel Corporation. Welcome to the Japan Iron Steel Federation side event, Pathway Toward Steel Decarbonization, Green Steel Leading on the Green Transition. Japan Iron Steel Federation is a non-profit industry organization for Japanese steel industry with approximately 50 iron steel producers and 50 steel trading companies as well. Before starting the event, let me address three housekeeping issues. First, about interpretation. This event will be conducted in English only, but online simultaneous interpretation only from English to Japanese is available for the participant to the web from the website. Please note that due to technical reasons, there will be approximately 30-second time lag in the interpretation from English to Japanese. Second, about QA session, we welcome questions during the panel discussion from on-site participants. Please address questions in English. Lastly, about the presentation materials, some slides are and will be available on the JISF website. Please visit www.jisf.or.jp. The official website of the Japan Iron Steel Federation. Okay, let me start the session. First, I'd like to welcome Mr. Hirofumi Funakoshi, Chair of Environment and Energy Committee of Japan Iron Steel Federation, and the Representative Director and Executive Vice President of Nippon Steel, for the opening remarks. So Mr. Funakoshi, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for our third event, Pathway to Steel Decarbonization, Green Steel Leading the Green Transition, organized by the Japan Iron and Steel Federation. I am Hirofumi Funakoshi from Nippon Steel Corporation, the Chair of Environment and Energy Committee at Japan Iron and Steel Federation. I would like to say a few words as a representative of the organizers. To achieve the 1.5-degree target of Paris Agreement, decarbonization of the steel industry is very important as it accounts for about 7% of global emissions. The Japanese steel industry supports Japan's ambitious policy of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. With the support of the Japanese government, we are working to develop innovative technologies, for example, hydrogen reduction steel making. But steel products with significantly reduced carbon dioxide emissions by innovative steel making technologies will not available until 2040s. In this situation, Japanese integrated steel makers recognize the importance of steady effort toward decarbonization or so-called transition. Nippon Steel and JFE Steel announced that we are working to start operation of high-grade steel products by around 2030 through implementation of large electric arc furnace. And Kobe Steel also began to study the introduction of electric arc furnace. As some of you may have attended the Keidanren Japan Business Federation's event, also introduced the importance of transition and case study of transitional initiatives from various sectors, including heavy industry and finance. This event will be dedicated to the steel industry and will feature how we are providing our customers with green steel, reflecting the value of carbon dioxide emission reduction to the economic value during the transition towards steel decarbonization. In addition, we will have a discussion with experts in various fields. We also welcome questions and comments from the floor. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Funakoshi. Now, I'd like to introduce today's speakers and the panelists. Today, we have three leading presentations. First, from Ms. Claire Broadbent from World Steel Association. Dr. Hitoshi Donomai from Japan Iron Steel Federation. And Mr. Riccardo Savigliano from UNIDO, United Nations Industry Development Organization. After three presentations, we will have a panel discussion with three speakers and Ms. Mari Yoshitaka of Mitsubishi UFJ Research and Consulting, and Mr. Kan Shikama from Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry of Japan. So let me first start with the Ms. Claire Broadbent from World Steel Association for the introduction of World Steel's activities, particularly for the first time, the introduction or inauguration of the World Steel Association's guideline on chain of custody approach to provide green steel to the market. So Ms. Broadbent, floor is yours.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Claire from the World Steel Association. We're the global association of steel companies from around the world. If you look at the global steel production, we produce 1.9 billion tons of steel per year, which equates to over 3.8 billion tons of CO2 emissions. So we've got a big job ahead of us, and there is much work being done on the implementation of breakthrough technologies to try to make sure that we can reduce these emissions on a global level. Now, but what I'm here to talk to you about today is really looking at what we can do in the short term to be able to assess the changes and the reductions that we're achieving within the steel sector, and whether we can see how we can account for these low emission steel products today while we're waiting for the implementation of technologies that are not yet currently commercially available. So we change slides, please. And the next one. Next slide. Yeah, thanks. Today, we see that there are many steel companies that are selling what they refer to as low emission steel products. Many people you'll hear are using their sort of simpler term of green steel. We try and avoid that, but it's sort of it's a term which is more commonly used. And these logos that you can see here come from the steel companies themselves. And they're all the different initiatives from the companies to sell their low emission steel products. But what do they mean? Are they equivalent to each other? Have they used the same methodology? Is one of the labels better than another label? So it's quite confusing. And there are comments and claims being made that the steel industry is greenwashing, and that we're sort of, how we're selling green steel or low carbon emission steel. What does it really mean? Some of these are actual products where they have access to high levels of scrap or high levels of low carbon energy sources, and their carbon footprint is very low. But the other products which we're seeing more and more on the market are these sorts of mass balanced steel products using chain of custody approaches. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about today. So in order to try to deal with some of the confusing nature of these logos and the different claims that are out there, we have been working on our chain of custody approaches. So on the next slide, we were requested by our executive committee. So it's really the CEOs of the main leading steel companies around the world who are really keen on making sure that we have some specific principles to ensure that what we're actually talking about in terms of the CO2 emissions from the steel industry are quite consistent, and to avoid the issues that are being raised in the marketplace. So back in April this year, we have been working on, and we published some high-level principles to help align the thinking amongst the steel industry producers on the need for having some chain of custody approaches, to highlight the need for transparency in these approaches, to avoid any double counting, to try and reduce the risk of greenwashing or claims of greenwashing, and making sure that a clear verification process is in place for what's being done. So this is something really where we're looking at, rather than making just these big changes in the reductions in the emissions, is the incremental changes, the smaller projects that are being implemented month by month or year by year to make the gradual changes, and how these emissions reductions can be pooled. How these emission reductions can be pooled by the steel companies and then be sold to customers, those customers who are interested in having the lower emission steel products. So it's not about saying, okay, we will reduce all of the emissions for all of the steel products, but in those markets where it's very key that today we need to have these low emission steel products, that there is a facility by which this can be done. So on the next slide, it's all very well having high-level principles, but they're not so useful in terms of how you can actually apply them. So we were requested, okay, or as we were developing the principles, that we needed to go into more details and provide some guidelines, which is a type of a methodology to be able to assess this. Luckily for us, the Japanese Iron and Steel Federation had already developed their own set of guidelines for how this can be done, or how this was being done in Japan. Obviously, as a global association, we can't just take some guidelines from one country and expect them to just be applied elsewhere. But it's great to have a starting point, because it's always easier to take what's already been developed and to work on those. So we developed a task force for the whole, invited the whole of our membership. And it's been actually one of the most fun projects that I've been working on within the steel sector recently. I've been working in the steel industry for 25 years. But this is really fun because it's a new topic. And it's, lots of the steel companies have been working on this. It's been very constructive. Companies come with one idea and someone says, hey, but actually, what about this? I've got a different perspective. And the answer is, oh, yeah, good point. And it's really actually been very nice to see the industry working together to come up with this set of guidelines. So it details how we can apply these chain of custody methods, and making sure that if we don't yet have agreement on certain topics, it's really about providing the transparency and not waiting till we've got the perfect guidelines published before we can actually do something about it. So on the next slide. So as it's COP, yes, we've published our guidelines in the past couple of days, so they're available on our website. It starts off by describing the different chain of custody approaches. There are different terms that are used, and they're not often used consistently, but the way we see it is we're using the different terms of chain of custody from mass balance and book and claim. And this links to whether there's an actual physical connection between in the production chain, in which case we say it's mass balance, or where it's within the same organization, but maybe not connected physically. It might be from a specific other site that you have somewhere else. And then that we refer to as book and claim. So the idea is you have to be very specific about which approach to use. We don't have agreement within the steel sector that you can only use one or the other. Therefore, we're saying choose one of these, but make sure it's clear and transparent which of these you're going to use, and then describe this in part of your scheme description. On the next slide, we then outline how you account for these reductions. So first of all, you need to calculate your carbon footprint. Maybe you published it 2 years ago, or maybe you published it this last year, but you follow existing standards that currently exist. We don't want new ones. You then calculate the emission reductions that have been achieved since the publication of that carbon footprint, and you bank those emission reductions. You bank them, it's individually for that specific company. It's not a steel related bank, it's really for your company. You then keep a record of what you've deposited into the bank, and then the withdrawals are the certificates that you then sell to your customer alongside the carbon footprint of the product that you would originally sell. Then once the customer has those certificates, and they can use those certificates as part of their emission reductions for their Scope 3 upstream emissions. And throughout all of this, it's very key that verification takes place against existing standards with the addition of the requirements that we've included in these guidelines. On the next slide, just briefly in terms of some of the key topic areas which have taken up our time, we need to make sure that the organizational coverage is very clear. Some steel companies make tea or concrete. You cannot bank emission reductions you've achieved in your concrete part of your company if you're going to use them for your selling steel-related certificates. There needs to be some idea of timeline to make sure that you can't keep banking and banking, and that your bank does have an expiration date. This is a short-term solution and not something that should be used up until 2050. On the next slide, we also need to make sure that we're considering net emissions. If your reduction projects have reduced your emissions in one part, but you've actually resulting in increasing some other part of your production process, a new raw material you need to be clear that it's a net reductions, so that you're not just then ending up with double counting of the emissions. And again, double counting, that's key throughout the whole of the guidelines. Next slide. And then finally, it's all about making sure that the projects that you're implementing contribute to additionality. So they're not things that account for your emissions improvements related to business as usual or normal operations. This again is a really key factor to make sure that we're actually contributing to decarbonizing our emissions, rather than just what would have happened anyway if we hadn't have implemented any additional projects. And the last one, the last aspect of the guidelines on the next slide is really the use by customers. We cannot dictate how customers will use these certificates. It's something which is still under discussion, but it's really to say you pass on the carbon footprint of the product in addition with these certificates and the emission savings. And the final slide then is really in terms of what are the next steps. So we published this version of the guidelines very much as version 1. This is how we use these emission reductions as part of certificates that we can sell alongside the products. But it's work in progress. There are various things we need to do going forward. One aspect is to see, is it necessary or is it appropriate that we're including those emission reductions in the carbon footprint of steel products? And if so, how? Also, some other industries, particularly in the plastic sector, are using the mass balance approach to account for the recycled content of their product. This is important in the packaging sector. If we're competing with other materials related to recycled content, we need to be following the same approach. But is it an approach that we want to take as a steel industry? Again, our task force is going to be working on this. There'll be an ISO standard which actually starts to be developed on the 12th of December. A very new ISO standard. Again, it's about chain of custody and life cycle assessment. So we're hoping and planning that our guidelines feed into this. We need to make sure that our guidelines are suitable for other sectors. We're open to having input from other sectors, from other organizations, and really to sort of encourage you, go and look at the guidelines on our website and feel free to send in any observations, any comments, any criticisms. Also, any positive comments are also welcome. Sorry, 2 minutes over time, but thank you for your attention. I look forward to the panel.
Thank you, Claire. You may have some questions, but the question and answer sessions will be toward the end of this the event. So please keep in mind. And the second presentation is from Dr. Hitoshi Donomae, Japan Iron Steel Federation, for the introduction of Japan Iron Steel Federation's activities and JISF case study, which we have already started marketing this green steel based upon chain of custody methodologies. So Dr. Donomae will share some of our experiences. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tezuka-san, for kind introduction, and thank you everyone for joining our event today. Yeah, I want to talk about our initiatives about related to the mass balance method, as Korea-san mentioned about that. Yeah, next slide, please. First of all, I want to talk about how difficult steel making process to decarbonize. Before I explain about the mass balance method. First, maybe you know we are making steel products from iron ore by using carbon in coal to reduce to make steel, but it's inevitably emit a lot of carbon dioxide. And second way is to make steel is from steel scrap. It's very low energetic, so the carbon intensity is 1/4 compared to the primary steel making from iron ore. So every people say that we should immediately transit to scrap steel making, but it's not easy to transit because next slide, please. Because steel demand is increasing, maybe double in the end of this century, but still scrap supply represent the blue line is represent the amount of scrap supply. So the gap between the red line and blue line should be made from pig irons. So it's very easy. It's not very easy to immediately transit to the scrap steel making process. Previous slide, please. Previous one. So we are going to transit to the hydrogen steel making from carbon steel making in the future. So we intensively investigate the hydrogen steel making, but it's not so easy because the carbon steel making is exothermic, but hydrogen steel making is endothermic. The most important point to make metallic products is to maintain the temperature inside the furnace, but hydrogen steel making, it's very difficult to maintain the temperature of inside the furnace. So it's very challenging, and also there are iron ore material problem because in the gas reduction, like hydrogen steel making needs high quality iron ore, but the high quality iron ore is very small amount we can get. So it's very we should overcome the material problem, and also there are no hydrogen supply chain. So all those challenging things have remaining. So we are intensively investigate to establish hydrogen steel making. Next slide, and next slide, please. So this is a roadmap of for decarbonization of the Japanese steel industry. Yeah, and vertical axis represent the GHG emission intensity, and horizontal axis represent timeline. The black line is the trajectory of GHG emission intensity to 2050. Maybe all you disappointed about this curve. It's not straightly to the 2040 nor 2050. It's which align to the 1.5 degrees C scenario, but it is a reality. We are now investigating hydrogen steel making, but it's very challenging and it takes time to complete our development. So after finishing our development, we will drastically decrease our carbon dioxide emission from our process. But still, we have to decrease gradually in this transition period to implement partially hydrogenation and partially electrification, but even partially, it needs enormous amount of investment. So we have to recover. If we cannot recover the investment cost, we cannot maintain our business. So it's very important for us. But 20% or 10% reduction, reduced low carbon steel is not so attractive to our customer. And also carbon pricing is not a silver bullet for hard to abate sector such as iron steel, because abatement cost is far higher than the carbon pricing. So we need another mechanism to create a new market for low carbon steel or low intensity steel. Next slide, please. So Japanese government, METI, proposed a new indicator. They fully understand the difficulty of decarbonization of iron and steel sector. So they proposed a new indicator, REPS, reduced emission of products. It's not a reduced emission of corporate nor reduced emission of project. It's a reduced emission embedded on products. It's a new point, and it is not same as avoided emission nor carbon footprint of products. So it is very easy to understand to compare with the carbon footprint of products. Carbon footprint, all of you understand what is carbon footprint of products. Carbon footprint of product is very similar, very familiar now, and our customers want us to supply low carbon footprint products immediately. But as I mentioned, that it is not easy for us to immediately provide low carbon footprint products. And also, carbon footprint of products sometimes mislead to the decarbonization of our industry because, for example, there are some low carbon footprint products made from scrap by using electric furnace, but we have already established scrap recycling system. More than 55% of scrap has already been recycled. 95% of scrap has already been recycled. So in that case, if someone use scrap and make steel products and provide the products to the customer, it's only transfer scrap from one company to another. So there are no additionality to the decarbonization. That is one example. So reduced emission of product REPS represent the effort of reduced GHG emission. So it is very a good indicator for the decarbonization, especially in the transitional period. Next slide, please. So I projected the REPS and CFP on that trajectory I showed in the first slide. Maybe you disappointed about REPS is very small amount, but don't worry, we emit a lot of carbon dioxide, as Korea mentioned, 3.6 billion GHG a year. So if you see, it seems very small amount, but total REPS will be very big. So the point is how to transfer REPS onto the certain products or certain company who want to buy low carbon products, and they can pay premium, and they can willingly to pay premium. So by getting the premium from the customer, we can continue our business sustainably and to go to the decarbonization of our industry. Next slide, please. So this is a practical case of applying GHG chain of custody approach, as Claire-san mentioned about that. We are running a lot of emission reduction projects, but we selected only additional emission reduction projects and pool the credit of emission reduction into a company's account. And from the account, we issue a certificate of REPS. In this case, physical measured carbon footprint is 2.0, but REPS -2. So 2 minus 2 equal 0. So the customers purchase this REPS can reduce their carbon scope 3 category 1 emissions. And by the premium paid for the green steel companies can raise funds for their next decarbonization investment. Next, please. In Japanese, 3 blast furnace companies have already established the brand Covenable Steel, G Greeks, and NS Carborex Neutral by applying this methodology and began selling those products to our customers. Next slide, please. This is one example. The green steel have already been contracted for the public procurement. And next slide, please. And second example is a very typical example for our concept of green steel. In this case, JFE Steel's G Greeks have applied for the bulk carrier cargo ships. And you see those supply chain of cargo ships. All those entities have agreed to share the cost of decarbonization, and they all agreed to pay premium cost for decarbonization to share the cost of the JFE G Greeks high cost, high premium. So next slide, please. But the difficulty point is there are no ask us where we can where some kinds of rules they can apply the reps to the customers scope 3 category 1 emission. So we are now intensively be involved in rule making for COC green steel. As Claire-san mentioned about World Steel have already published last week, World Steel Guideline has published, and also JISF have published our guidelines 1 year ago. But it's only a sectoral standard, so we are now established general standards such as ISO, GHG protocol, or SBTi, and domestically, our government, METI, is promoting to set guidelines for REPS. The guideline will be available in the near future, and this guideline is now developed by the Japanese LCA Society. So we began discussing how to improve the principles and theories of this COC chain of custody approach. And maybe Ricardo-san will mention about the activity of UNIDDI. One of the most important activity is to apply this approach to procurement. So, and also domestically, the Japanese government is agreeing to apply this approach. And also we just began discuss with the automotive industry and building industry, who are our customers sector. So conclusion, I don't want to read all the conclusions, but the COC approach is very important to establish the green steel market. So, but the most important point is to rule making. So we would like to ask for your support in international rule making. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Donomai. Those are the kind of a new proposal or business case of a steel industry, how to monetize the gradual emission reduction approaches. Even gradual emission reduction approaches are costly. Someone need to pay for that to continue improving. And it's quite a bit difficult for the steel industry to sponsor everything within the organization. How we can provide a value to the customers, and customers can pay the value of the emission reduction effort of the steel industry. So this is the kind of the new business model proposal from the steel industry. Then I'd like to invite the Mr. Riccardo Salvigliano from UNIDO for IDDI, Industry Decarbonization Initiative. This is basically the global initiative for the public procurement on the greener the products to enhance the market. The public sector is probably very important. The potential customer of the first generation of a greener product, which is costly, to promote a global green market stimulation. So I'm very much interested in hearing from your the presentation. And Ricardo-san, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tezuka-san. And I would like to start by thanking the government of Japan for hosting us, because, and in particular, for the leadership that the government of Japan is showing constantly in the area of industry deep decarbonization, in particular in the steel sector. So thank you for that. And I would like also to thank the Japanese Iron and Steel Federation for inviting UNIDO to talk about this initiative as has been presented, the IDDI, the Industry Deep Decarbonization Initiative. My name is Riccardo Savigliano. I'm the chief of the unit called Energy Systems and Industry Decarbonization at UNIDO, coordinator several initiatives, including IDDI. Next slide, please. The IDDI is an initiative coming from the Clean Energy Ministerial, the CEM. Is a coalition of governments and private sector partners working together to try to help industries, in particular steel and cement, to decarbonize their productions. And how we do it? We do it by trying to create market demands for low carbon products. And here we have the list of countries that are supporting actively the platform. And then you see here, of course, Japan, UK, India, Brazil, Canada, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Sweden, the US, and the United Arab Emirates. And in the next slide, I will explain you a bit more how this network is working. But first, let me say why we concentrate on these two sectors under IDDI is because cement and steel represent roughly 10% of global emissions. And together, 50% of the industrial emissions. So the problem, as was also mentioned by Claire before and my speakers before me, happening. So making, let's say, the efforts very well focused. And in the future, those emissions, if we don't act, will, let's say, they are projected to grow. And for the next 40 years, what we always say is that cement and steel are used every month to build an equivalent of a city of New York. And that will happen again for the next 40 years. So we need to act, and we need to act globally. So under IDDI, we are trying to kind of support that mechanism. Next slide, please. So as I said before, I would like just to draw your attention on the way IDDI works. As I said, it's a very small coalition of 10 countries, though countries which are extremely relevant in the global debate. But still, I mean, we work under the Clean Energy Ministerial, so our landscape is actually mandates to that network of initiatives, and IDDI focuses on three specific streams. The first is to look into the greenhouse gas emissions accounting standards. So we are trying to work to facilitate a dialogue on how to measure emissions on those two sectors. Then we try to facilitate a dialogue on how to define low emission products. So that's so after we account on the emissions, so how those emissions are in a way accounted into products and how the markets are, let's say, getting products with the knowledge of the carbons embedded in those products. And thirdly, which is what has been mentioned before, we support governments to come with some strategies to send strong market signals through public procurement initiatives. Why? Because governments are responsible for the purchase of 40% of steel and concrete in general, steel and cement, in particular for their infrastructures. So again, it's another, I mean, the support from governments is key to get market signals. How we work on working groups. So we try to work on a consensus basis, and we have working groups, thematic working groups, where we have also our partners here on this podium, all of them very active in the IDDI. But then we have also NGOs, other governments, academia joining the network, and so on. Next slide, please. So then we go into the topic of this session is how IDDI is trying to kind of look into the chain of custody, greenhouse gas emission chain of custody approach. And at the COP28 last year, IDDI produced a white paper highlighting how the chain of custody approaches could be a lever to help manufacturers to capture financial values from emission reduction. So the topic of today. So I would like to highlight that there are several ways, in particular two main approaches to chain of custody. One is the mass balance, which allows manufacturers to aggregate their emissions reductions from a side or from a company and already account it into a portion of their products put on the market. There is another approach, which is called book and claim, which basically allows manufacturers to sell their products and their emission reduction separately. Those are two substantially different approaches, and we don't have an opinion on which one is the best compared to the other. But still, we believe that both of them could be extremely relevant. For instance, the bulk claim could be, in particular for cement, probably more efficient because we may help delinking basically the selling of products that are not going to be exported globally. So there are where the demand is localized, so it's different from the steel aspect. So anyway, we at IDDI, we looked into that. We, of course, it's last year, but still, we believe it's still fresh as a study. So we encourage you to have a look at that. It's available online. Next slide, please. So what we believe is that for both of those approaches, what is extremely important is that customers and investors should reach a trust in the system and should agree on a mechanism robust and honest. We heard about greenwashing before at the earlier beginning of the session. So we should make sure that that is not the case, because otherwise we have been told the journey of decarbonization will go up to 2050. So we should be careful since the beginning to set up a mechanism trustful enough to be accepted by customers and by manufacturers. This is what basically we do at UNIDO under the IDDI. And then again, I would like to thank the leadership of Japan, in particular METI on that, and the JICF for the technical support, continuous inspiration on this dialogue. And I think with that, I concluded. If you can, yes, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ricardo-san. That's a very good point that this approach, the new way of providing greener steel, low carbon steel, is the kind of a investment support initiative. In this way, we can continue investing our emission reduction projects and the investments. With this, we have finalized 3 presentations. Then I'd like to ask Ms. Mari Yoshitaka about your comment on this initiative. Particularly, you are in the financial sector as well as global rule making of the green transformation. So maybe you may have some comments on our initiative and how we can develop new green steel market, avoiding the suspicion of the greenwashing. Could you comment?
Thank you very much for your introduction, Tetsuka-san. But I don't have the extensive knowledge about the iron industry. So, but I'm currently participating that the Green Steel Study Group organized by the Ministry of Economy and Trade Industry. And now I'm learning that what's the value of the green steel in the market. So, and I also have been working on carbon business as well as the climate financing to internalize the environment value in the market for so many years, more than 20 years now. And I'm very interested in implementing the internalization of the externality in the real market, not just on the paper. So I'm very interested in that the value of the green steel and definitely for example, I'm involved in supporting that the value of the avoided emission for the electronic products as well as the real estate business. Of course, a company must reduce their own emissions, of course. And also, but simultaneously, that the company, especially corporation, must be evaluated by the the investors or financial institutions to obtain that funding or raise the money to operate their business sustainably. So that just about green steel, actually to prepare the discussion, I had a meeting with the SBTI yesterday about and asking about this, topics. And in fact, I like to quote it that the SBTI has recently published that the discussion paper on the scope 3 guidance, and now they are actually developing that corporate net zero standard now. And then actually the meeting of the topic yesterday was that, and I just quoted that according to that papers, despite their high environmental impact, upstream activities often capture a smaller share of economic value compared to the other stages in the value chain, such as processing, marketing, and retail. Furthermore, these emissions-intensive activities face a much higher green premium from the increased cost of decarbonized production process in the comparison to the downstream customer-facing users of these commodities. Then also this paper actually refers to responsible steels. So I asked the SBTI that the green steel market or certification for the green steel, they recognize that, and then they don't much criticize of this. So I'm so glad that the international standard like SBTI accept this. So for financial institutions perspective, this is very important. So but to actually the mass balance method, and I think it's a traditional product until the real low carbon steel is available on the market. So the mass balance product have a potential to promote the green market, but still, of course, I recognize this importance of this value, but from the perspective of the financial point of view, firstly, the economics, actually, Donovan mentioned that the high quality iron ore could be scarce in the future, don't you think? Okay. The economies of scale result in lower products costs, production volume increases. So, however, even if the demand for the low emission steel increases, the cost will not decrease, and the price per unit will not decrease if the material becomes more scarce. So with this market outlook, how the financial institution to make decision to invest in that kind of the a plan or a project. So even though that the government inject a large amount of the subsidy in the capex, the OPEX shouldn't be decreased in the future, right? So that's the I like to more discussion. I like to have a more discussion. And secondly, the financial industry deals in intangible asset. So credibility or trust, as Ricardo mentioned, that trustworthiness is very important for our financial business. So they want to avoid the greenwashing, as you know. So it's very difficult to evaluate for the financer to value of the virtual carbon steel until reduction achievement of amount is clear to quantified. So how you qualify that. So that's also I like to concerned. I'm concerned about. Okay, that's a comment.
Thank you very much, Mari-san. It's kind of very encouraging that even SBTI started recognizing how to pass on the cost of the greener product to the final entire society. And probably this is going to be a very big issue, not only for steel, but all the upstream material manufacturing industries, because we cannot be alone to bear the burden of carbon price in the coming years. That cost must be shared. And also, Mari-san mentioned that hard to abate sectors, the cost cannot easily go down just because the production volume increased because of the difficulties, the making access to green hydrogen, making access to higher quality, the scarce raw materials and so forth. And everyone is rushing into the same supply such as high quality iron ore or scraps, then the price will be even increase rather than decrease. So this is the common problem steel companies are now facing in the global market. Then I'd like to ask Mr. Shikama, the Japanese government, start considering how to create the market for greener products, how to create the predictability of the return on investment for the material industry such as steel for the providing greener products with higher cost.
Thank you for, can you hear me? Okay. So thank you for one of the challenges, in Japan as well. So as like other countries do so, how to, for creating demand, so what is a good way to like promote green transformation? So, and what is the best way, good evaluate like environmental indicator for the like, promoting green transformation? And we're now discussing, so like as Don Mason said, so we are discussing now, like, as you might know, like CFP is one of the indicator, but like we're discussing now the emission reduction we evaluate, so for the product. So, and like, CFP is not the sometimes only way to promote, I think, so green transformation. So that's why emission reduction is there, so we should, do emission reduction now, so towards net zero. So that's why during transition period, so CFP is the not only way, I think, so that's why, so we now proposing, like, as he said, reps now. So for example, like in steel industry, like, they have, so steel industry has heterogeneity of, I think decarbonization. So that means that, so they have different type of, like assets and its age as well, and energy efficiency and accessibility to, resources. So we should acknowledge the, heterogeneity, and and we should think, so how to decarbonize the steel industry. So as if you compare, that just only CFP, carbon footprint, so there are two main methods, in steel industry. So electric arc furnace and blast furnace. So if you compare the both, methods, so electric arc furnace, so the emission high intensity is very low than blast furnace. So, but we should, decarbonize the, blast furnace, like primary steel. So that's why we should, encourage their like primary steel production to decarbonize. So that's why we're discussing, how to evaluate the environmental value of products. And then now we are discussing, and we haven't, like decided yet how to calculate that. But we should, avoid the greenwashing. So that's why we should, we should like, I think, we should like discuss about, in transparent way and like reliable way. So that's what we like now are discussing.
Thank you, Shikama-san. Having heard this, Ricardo-san, the IDDI is the initiative among 10 countries, and the government of Japan committed in this way. How do you, I have two questions. One is how the rest 9 countries are following. Are they sharing the same value, same thought to promote public procurement on this, the greener, higher cost greener products or not? And also, do you have any plan to expand the states, the membership of the IDDI to make this movement in a global manner?
Thank you very much. And it's actually very good questions, for which I have also some late, let's say, good news that I would like to share. I mean, let's say we have a different levels of commitments under the green public procurement. We acknowledge that the fact that countries, regulatory frameworks, and also the markets of green products are not always following the same speed. So we have basically we came with a proposal which was accepted by the 10 countries to have a staged approach into public procurement, starting from agreeing on definitions, looking into measurements, looking into then next steps is disclose the carbon embedded in infrastructures, and then go into the commitments to lower the carbon in the purchased material. So it's something that, as you can see, has a very even long-term way of engaging. And yesterday, actually, at our pavilion, one of the most advanced countries in terms of pledged is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which has anticipated their pledge of green products. Let's say they anticipated their pledge of green products. Japan and Austria, for instance, they signed a kind of letter of intent to basically to start looking into the matter. And Austria is outside the IDDI, so we welcome very much governments to join the initiatives also only on a portion of that. So it's something that we still believe sending, let's say, for governments to rule the market by how to say, to rule the markets, let's say directly, like committing into and setting, let's say, for themselves strict rules, and sending out messages on clear pathways of decarbonization. It's one of the most efficient tools that governments have to send, again, market signals. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Let me ask questions to Dr. Donomai and Claire. Having heard those very the good supportive comments from the government's side, and as well as the global consultancy such as Mari-san mentioned, SBTI. But in the real world, still this is a very new concept. So a lot of things to do. Dr. Domai, could you share your the issues of this the reps based green steel based upon your experience on selling the marketing this product? And also, Kureya-san, you are not only working with global steel industry, but also working intensively with outside stakeholders, organizations or rule-making bodies. How did you what kind of impression did you get on this the new concept of a greener steel from those outside stakeholders? Could you share?
Okay, I will answer very shortly. Thank you very much for very important question. The most difficult point is that both green steel and non-green steel have the same physical characteristics. So there are no difference between the two, the same products. But green products is very expensive because we have to invest a lot of capex, and as Mari-san mentioned about, our OPEX will be higher than non-green steel. So some maybe making society, everyone willingly to pay premium for greener steel is the most important point.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's quite a in some ways a controversial subject. Not all of World Steel members are in favor of these sorts of certificates or mass balance and book and claim, but they're very aware of the fact that something needs to be done to have some guidelines. So if companies are going to do it, then should be the way they go. Outside of the steel sector, well, since I started working in the industry, we've really sort of, as I want to looking at these mass balance approaches. So it's really about being open and transparent. And I think because it's something that we're doing and it's really at the beginning of the journey, then I think it's being welcomed and quite a positive thing. One of the things that we hear quite often is that people say, but the additional premium that people are willing to pay for this low emission steel, some people say, yeah, sure, we'll pay. And then you hear a bit later, well, actually not. Another example is often, yeah, but the increase in the cost of a car is 1% if you're using this green steel, low carbon steel. So the consumer, surely they don't mind paying this 1%. Well, there's a few issues with that. One, it's not just the steel that's being, having this premium on it, but also it's the actual automotive producers who are the ones who have to pay a lot more than 1% additional cost. And that's where the issue lies. It's not the automotive producers aren't getting a 1% premium on their products. So it's really a business to business issue that needs to be resolved.
Steel is not the material to be used in a car, many other plastics or glass or whatever. So in total, that cannot be 1%. Anyway, Yoshitaka-san, Mari-san, could you have any suggestion for us to be more convincing or avoid so-called greenwashing suspicion or whatever? What should we do to clear that kind of a hurdle?
Well, that's the tough question, actually. But first of all, certification things. Actually, the concept of the mass balance method is disseminated. You should be carefully deal with that certificate because these days the criticize to the carbon credit and the other economic mechanism is quite bad reputation so far. So just I like to actually recommend you. And but it also would be better clarify the relationship with the carbon pricing or other public incentives and the green premium on that your product. Because as you know that the functionality of the steel is still as a material, even though you invest a lot of money, but compared to the other products. So definitely even though the government support a lot of things in that, and then now the Japan introduced the carbon pricing and sometime soon. In this case, it's very carefully take care of this. Is that okay? I'm really interested in that approach of the chain of the custody because it's like a Bitcoin or the market creation of the Bitcoin like this. Just that.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have 5 minutes or so for the question and answer session. So just only 2 or 3 questions from the floor if you have. Could you raise your hand and identify yourself if you have any question? No? Yes.
I had a question for Ricardo, which was about whether or not the members of your association, the collaboration, are required as part of their commitment to being part of this group to invest in green procurement. Is it like a first movers coalition where they are also signing up?
It's a parallel initiative. So the first mover coalition is basically addressing the markets from the private sector. And this one is similar. So we report to the same group. This both are initiatives under the Clean Energy Ministerial. So the first mover coalition looking into the private sector, and the IDDI looking onto the public sector. So those are two initiatives running in parallel. We have a lot of, let's say, similarities, and we cooperate together. Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
Can I just add, because the countries that sign up, they have to make some pledges, right? And the pledges are linked, or when they make their pledges are linked to agreeing to purchase a certain percentage of low carbon steel or cement and concrete.
As I said before, not necessarily. So we have, let's say, countries looking into that, but not that they have not yet committed into going, like getting pledges or going into pledges for their purchases. But others are also joining for the public procurement for countries outside the IDDI initiative. So it's something that is blended. I mean, the same, I understand, it's a bit complicated, but this same initiative includes way more countries. So it's an initiative which is almost global. So we go like 78 countries probably, like in the same initiative. So it's one of the initiative within this global and more, let's say, how to say, complex, let's say, set of initiatives under this clean energy ministry. So I can give you more details if you want so, but otherwise on the web you will get all those details. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I have the non-Japanese steel representative sitting in front. So could you identify yourself and comment on this?
I'm working for the POSCO Research Institute from Korea. Just another question, just comment. I think it's in order to avoid the greenwashing, I think the terminology is very important. I think green steel is very important, not green steel. In Korea, NGO argued there is no green steel. Green steel is possible, but not green steel in considering the environmental law. So another method, we must develop the international standard like ISO, set up the certification mechanism, and then MLA or MLA mechanism scheme. MLA is a government perspective of mutual recognition agreements, but in private sectors, MLA, multilateral agreements. As far as I know, ISO already the MLA scheme, International Accreditation Forum. So maybe it's 86 company joined this method, this scheme. And the third one, I would like to suggest Korea government green CFE, clean carbon-free energy instead of renewable energy. I think IDDI initiative linked the CFE 100. It's a perfect scheme, just I think.
Thank you very much. We are always open for the improvement because this is a very new initiative. Thank you very much for participating. And I think this is a kind of a business case showing you that how to abate industry can be supported or sponsored by the customers or the government in doing a business rather than getting subsidies from the government, because we are doing business rather than get our purpose is making steel to sell steel to the market. We need to be profitable by doing that, even making the greener steel. So that's our proposal on this chain of custody methodology is one of the solutions to this the very hard and difficult the journey toward the carbon neutrality in the coming decades among steel companies. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope that you got some message from our panel. So that's the end of the session. Thank you.